How do you handle the frustration of being a virgin when you don't want to be? Hey everyone, Harris O'Malley from DrNerdLove.com. Lately, we've been talking a lot about the various forms of toxic masculinity and the ways that it can hurt men as individuals and the way that it damages society as a whole. And one of the big questions that comes up whenever we talk about this is, so, what do we do about it? Well, one of the ways that we actually can start to dismantle these toxic ideas around what it means to be a man, and to also start to heal some of the damage and the pain that it's caused, is to talk openly and honestly about a lot of the issues that get bundled in as part of the toxic masculinity package. And one of the biggest topics is sex, especially how it affects men who aren't having it. A lot of people out there, men and women both, feel ashamed of being virgins. And to be perfectly honest, the way that we treat virginity in this culture is kind of fucked up. And this can be especially troublesome for male virgins because there are a lot of issues caught up in masculine identity and sexuality. Sex, after all, is a core component of toxic masculinity. Your value and your measure as a man often is based around how much sex you've had and how often you're having it. And if you've not had sex at all, then are you really a man? I hear from men all the time who are in very real pain, who feel ashamed of being virgins. They feel as though they're broken or inherently flawed. And they think they've missed their window of opportunity and now it will never happen for them. And part of what's significant is the age range of people that I hear from. I hear from 15-year-olds as often as I do from 50-year-olds who feel as though that it's too late for them because they didn't have sex according to some schedule. A schedule that is entirely self-inflicted. In fact, a lot of the shame and stigma that comes from being a virgin comes from within. One of the quirks of the human brain is we have what is known as a discrepancy-reducing feedback loop. Short version of this, our brain pays attention to our goals, how long it takes us to achieve those goals, and how much effort we are putting forward to get there. The problem is that our brains also have an idea of how long it's supposed to take to get there, and that idea often has no basis in reality. We live with a cultural narrative that you are supposed to be having sex by some arbitrary point in your life. If you live in the US, that point is usually high school. And if you can tie losing your virginity into some other event, whether it is homecoming, prom, winning a football game, graduation, turning 16, whatever, so much the better. The thing is, that's all made up. It's bullshit. These are lessons that we have absorbed through lifetimes of pop culture. There are dozens of movies and even more TV shows that treat a teenage boy's attempt to lose his virginity as though he is going on an epic quest. Porky's, The Last American Virgin, American Pie, Sex Drive, Superbad, Road Trip. It's all part of the story of someone transitioning from boyhood to man through the transformative power of sex. That's part of what fucks us up. We take one moment in life and imbue it with such unbelievable importance that we make it impossible to progress until you've achieved that milestone. Even The 40-Year-Old Virgin, a movie that should, in theory, be sympathetic to virgins and older virgins in particular, treats the main character, Andy, not as a man, but as an overgrown man-child who ultimately has to give up his childish things that bring him joy in order to pass the threshold and become a real man by sleeping with Catherine Keener. Part of what increases that anxiety is this sense that other people can tell that you're a virgin. Don't have sex by some arbitrary date and you get stamped with a scarlet V that everybody can detect, the way that dogs can detect fear or bacon. That sense of shame often leads to isolation, and that shame and isolation becomes self-reinforcing. Like I said last week, When you have isolated yourself for long enough, your brain starts to treat social events as threats, and this causes your anxiety to increase. That increased anxiety leads to withdrawing and isolating yourself even further. And it all means that you're more likely to buy into, frankly, bullshit myths about virgins and virginity because it confirms all the worst things that you already believe about yourself. Men who are virgins past a certain point are virgins because they are flawed or ugly or broken. Women don't like virgin men because no woman wants to have to teach a man how to chew his food, or they only want someone who they know other people want, or women can smell the genetic inferiority. For the love of God, stop spreading that. Learn how to science. Most of that shame and that stigma is all based on shit that has no basis in reality. It is thrown at men by other men. Why? Because there is no better way to firm up your credentials as a man than to police the masculinity of someone else. Yes, there are women out there who will shame men for being virgins, who will believe in those myths, and who will perpetuate that stigma. But not only are they a minority, they're also proving themselves to be assholes. Let's be real. You've got better things to do than to concern yourself with the opinions of assholes. And the irony of it is that putting this much attention and focus and importance on sex actually makes the frustration of being a virgin that much harder to resolve. Sex is great. Sex can be amazing, but sex doesn't change who you are. Having sex for the first time does not make you into a different person. Afterwards, you'll be exactly the same person you were before, just someone who has now had a new experience. That's it. When you start treating sex as this life-altering event, something that is going to literally transform your life, you are imbuing it with so much importance and such awesome power that it becomes almost too intimidating to pursue. It becomes paralyzing, and that makes you feel even worse for never having achieved it. Remember what I said earlier about the discrepancy reduction feedback loop? Part of the way that this screws us over is because it pays attention to how long you're taking to achieve those goals and how much effort you're putting in. Take too long, even if that length of time is completely arbitrary, and you start to get frustrated. And then you start to get angry. And then you start to despair, and your brain decides that your goal is actually impossible. At that point, you start to sabotage yourself, because it's a lot easier to give up on a goal when you believe that there is something inherently wrong with you that makes it impossible to ever actually reach it. And the hell of it is, when you have that mindset, even if you do manage to achieve that goal, even if you do manage to have sex, you're going to find reasons why it doesn't count. One of the comments on the video for last week actually drives this home. If someone were to lose their virginity to a sex worker, then it wouldn't count because they didn't, quote-unquote, earn it. The fact that you cheated the system means that this is somehow invalid. Therein lies one of the major problems. The idea that you somehow earn sex, that it's a reward to you for being sufficiently manly. You outmanned all of her other potential sex partners, and therefore you're the one who got laid. That's not how sex works. Sex isn't a reward. You don't earn man coupons that you then take over to the desk and exchange it for a prize. Women's genitals aren't Mjolnir. They don't measure the worthy. There is no woman out there with a tattoo above her pubic mound that says, "Whomsoever shall part these thighs, if they be worthy, shall gain the power of score." In fact, there are plenty of times where men and women both will have sex with someone for reasons that have absolutely nothing to do with the person they're sleeping with. Sometimes it's because they have something to prove to themselves or to someone else. Sometimes they're sleeping with another person because they're trying to send a message to a third party. And sometimes it's because they're bored and that was the nearest acceptable warm body. The fact that somebody slept with you doesn't mean that you have gripped the handle and you have lifted the hammer and now you're a god. It's just someone chose to have sex with you, which may or may not have anything to do with you. While we're on the topic, the fact that you're a virgin isn't really a disqualifier. I know it feels like everybody can smell the no sex having on you, but honestly, most people are never going to know. More often than not, the only reason why anybody knows whether a dude is a virgin or not is because he went off on a rant about it. How do you know if a dude on Reddit's a virgin? Don't worry, he'll tell you. And it's almost always a rant about how awful it is that he's a virgin, how it's unfair, and how women are terrible, and now it'll never happen for him, and he's doomed, doomed, doomed. It's never, yeah, I'm a virgin, and you know what? That's okay. It'll happen when it happens. That's exactly the problem. Because, with the exception of a few assholes out there, the reason why women sometimes get a little cautious around virgins has nothing to do with virginity or not liking male virgins. It has to do with the fact they have dealt with guys who are deeply bitter and angry and resentful about it. It's that attitude that pushes women away, not how many people you have or haven't slept with. There are plenty of women out there, I know, I've heard from them, whose boyfriends or husbands were virgins when they met, and their virginity was never an issue. But the key thing there is that for those men, their virginity was not central to their identity. It was just one data point in the set that was the totality of who they were. Nor, for that matter, does being a virgin mean that sex with you is going to be awful or that you're not going to be able to please a woman. Sex isn't about how many tricks you know, or you slept with enough people so now you're a tantric master. It's about connection and communication. There are people who have had dozens of partners who are god-awful in bed. If you're willing to listen, if you're willing to take direction without letting your ego get in the way, and if you don't make your orgasm the end-all be-all of the encounter, then you can be an amazing lover, even if it's your first time. And in fact, I've got some specific tips for people having sex for the first time. I've linked to it in the show notes below. Go check it out and then come back. Now, the question becomes, so what do you do about all of this? How do you handle the frustration, the shame, the stigma? And the answer isn't get laid at all costs, because that doesn't actually deal with the underlying issues. In fact, it just reinforces the idea that there is something shameful about being a virgin. If you want to destigmatize virginity, if you want to take away the feeling of shame of being a virgin when you don't want to be, then you have to start being the change that you want to see in the world. You need to be the person who treats virginity in yourself and in other people as inherently neutral. The person who says, and so what's your point, when somebody else brings up virginity, whether they're talking about you or they're talking about somebody else. And that all comes with changing how you see sex and yourself. You have to change the equation that says it should have taken you X long to have sex, and because you didn't manage that, you have failed. You do that by taking sex out of the equation entirely. In the words of the master, focusing on sex is like the finger pointing the path to the moon. If you focus on the finger, then you miss all of the heavenly glory. Focusing on sex and the fact that you haven't had it yet just reinforces the idea that you should have done it by now, and makes you more angry and frustrated because you've somehow missed your shot. And that's because you're treating sex as though it were somehow separate from the person you're having sex with. Sex isn't a reward, it's not something you earned, it's not something that can be redistributed, and it's not a milestone that determines whether or not you're a real man. And so, instead of focusing on sex, both trying to find it and the fact that you haven't had it, what you need to focus on is building connections. And not just connections with the people that you want to sleep with, but connections with people in general. Like I said last week, a lot of times the problem isn't the lack of sex, it's the loneliness. It's missing that connection, missing that intimacy. Focusing on connecting instead of on sex helps build that closeness. It helps you find that intimacy and fills that void that you're feeling. And in doing so, it helps you find your validation, it helps your self-confidence, and your self-assuredness. And in building the connections in general, you learn how to build the connections with the person or people that you will sleep with in the future. And believe me, the person that you are looking to find, they are someone who is going to be open, who is going to be caring, and who's going to be non-judgmental. Someone for whom the fact that you're a virgin is a relative non-issue. Someone who judges you for being a virgin at whatever age you are is someone that you don't want to sleep with. But in order to get there, you are going to have to ditch the attitude. You're going to have to get out of your own head, and you're going to have to get out of your own way. You're going to have to make the conscious choice to believe that you're a virgin and that's fine. You're going to have to be the one who stops using virginity as an insult, even with yourself. And hey, maybe you'll need help with that. Maybe you'll have to talk with someone. Negativity is hard to shake. When you've been stewing in bitterness and anger for a long time, it is hard to get out. And in those cases, you may need help. And you know what? Good. Go get that help. Talk to a counselor. Talk to a therapist. They are there to help you process and sort through and handle those complicated and complex feelings. Getting help isn't a sign of weakness. It is a sign of strength. You are saying that you understand yourself well enough to know what you aren't capable of and to get the help that you need so that you can move forward. And the sooner that you seek it out, the sooner that you can start to improve. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that being a virgin is awesome or that you shouldn't want to lose your virginity. You're frustrated at being a virgin, and you know what? That's legitimate. That is real. That is valid. You're lonely. That's okay. But whether you're a virgin or not has nothing to do with your value as a person, with your desirability, or whether you're a real man or not. Being a virgin, even if you're older than the average, is fine. The only thing that makes it a problem is how you let it affect you and how you let it define you. Oh, and one more thing. There is no such thing as too late. Yeah, you would rather not be a virgin at whatever age you are right now. And in fairness, pretty much every virgin feels that way. But you could stand around being angry and bitter about all the things that you didn't get to do or the things that you feel like you've missed out on, or you can focus on taking control of your life now and building it to where you want it to be. The time that you spend looking back on all the things that you haven't done is time that you're taking away from the things that you can be doing now and in the future. It's like a wise man once said, there is no such thing as spare time, there is no such thing as free time, there is no such thing as downtime, there is only lifetime. Go. Hey, thanks for checking out the latest video. So you've heard from me, now I'd like to hear from you. Tell me a little bit about your story in the comments below. Whether you have lost your virginity, whether you are working towards it, or whether your partner was someone who lost their virginity to you. And if you have a short dating question or a topic you'd like to hear more about on here, then send that to me as well. You can share that in the comments, or you can hit me up at doc@drnerdlove.com for YouTube in the subject header. And if you're wanting to learn how to build the skills that let you connect with other people, then might I suggest checking out some of my books. I especially recommend New Game Plus, The Geek's Guide to Love, Sex, and Dating. Not only is this a dating instruction manual, but it is a social skills guide. It will teach you how to connect with people, both platonically as friends and as potential lovers. Links to buy it are in the show notes below, so go check it out. If you do buy it and you enjoy it, then do me a huge favor and leave a review on Amazon and Goodreads. 5 stars in a review is a massive help. If you dug the video, then you know what to do. Hit that thumbs up. Be sure to subscribe to never miss an update. But if you are really getting a lot out of this, if you're finding that this has all been helping, then consider supporting the channel by becoming a patron at patreon.com/drnerdlove. Even $1 is a huge help. And like I've said before, I can't do this without the support of my patrons. So thank you all so very much. I appreciate every single one of you. Meanwhile, come find me on Twitter at @DrNerdLove. Join the Facebook page at facebook.com/DrNerdLove. And as always, hit that logo to subscribe. Check out my other videos, and I will be back with you next time with more about love, sex, and dating. Later.